Hi, good morning, everybody. And today is November 11th. This is a Monday morning. As we are recording right now, we are recording live. We are recording indoors this time, as you can notice. On the video, I might look slightly different. I'm not wearing a hat. I'm wearing a new headset that I have. I really enjoy using this new headset. It works great. Today is Veterans Day, so I just want to say Happy Veterans Day, and I want to thank people in the military for their service. Since I am not brave enough to join the military, they are, so I want to thank them for their sacrifices so I could be here recording right now. What I want to go through is, at the beginning of the season, I made my preseason predictions in each league, the AFC and the NFC. So, what I want to do as we get started on the show is I want to revisit my prediction and see how accurate I am with my picks. So, let's go AFC first without further ado. So AFC East, I said the Patriots win the division. It really wasn't that hard of a pick at all. I don't think anyone was really a challenge at all. That looks very accurate right now. The Patriots are almost certainly going to win the East right now. They did lose to the Ravens the other night, so they're now 8-1, but they're going to win the East. They're very likely going to have a first round bye. And when the playoffs starts, and again, we still have about 7 weeks left to play, but if the playoff starts, I would say the Patriots would be Super Bowl favorites right now. So that looks accurate. North, I said the Ravens win the division. That looks very likely right now. I watched Lamar Jackson play yesterday. I watched it live against the Bengals. He looked great again, had some very nice runs, including the spin move. Made some very nice throws, had a couple touchdown passes. Lamar Jackson could very well be an MVP candidate. I was very impressed with Lamar Jackson yesterday, as really Ravens fans should be. And again, it's been about a year since he's taken over, and it's just been a complete transformation for the Ravens offense. So next up, we have in the South, we have the Texans. I think they'll probably win the division. The Colts just lost a few games in a row to the Steelers and to the Dolphins, and I still have a lot of catching up to do around the league. I saw a total of 3 games yesterday. I saw the Ravens, Bengals, Packers, Panthers, and of course Sunday night. I usually do. I'm not a huge red zone guy or Sunday ticket. I usually like to focus on usually 3 games just to try to figure out what's going on, or never more than 2 games at a time. So, anyways, the Texans, I'd say are favorites to win the division, and they currently are. That's going to stick. West, okay, so here's what I did with the AFC West. I picked the Chargers at the beginning of the year. Here's why I picked the Chargers, and I probably explained that in the last video. The reason why I picked the Chargers is I saw what they did last year, where they won 12 games, were toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, and I thought you could make an argument, are they the best team in the AFC, since, well, they didn't win the division. They ended up being the Chiefs, and they had to play in the wild card game. I thought they were going to beat the Patriots. Like, they had a better record than the Patriots last year, where the Patriots single-handedly beat them. I thought they were going to beat the Patriots, and that didn't work out. But I thought they're returning this team. They're coming back. Sometimes when a team does something really successfully, think, maybe they'll take a step forward, and they're going to win the West this year. I think they're better than the Chiefs, and they're going to win the West. I couldn't be any more wrong that they lost a bad game on Thursday night. They're almost certainly going to miss they're very likely going to miss the playoffs right now after losing the Raiders on Thursday night. They end up that tiebreaker. They're just not the same team. I talked about Melvin Gordon at length about 6 weeks ago in late September. So obviously, so if you think about Melvin Gordon right now, it's just not the same Chargers team. I missed on that pick. I was wrong. Wild card I said would be the Chiefs, which they're 6-4, and that was a crazy game against the Titans yesterday. I saw the end of it. I'm gonna go through that probably tomorrow. But the way they play, losing to the Titans, but again, they're gonna win the division. They survived without Patrick Mahomes managed to go 2-1, and they played it. And while a loss is a loss, I know it. They played a very competitive game with the Packers. Could have beaten the Packers. Certainly had an opportunity to beat the Packers without Patrick Mahomes. So that was a good sign. They managed to go 2-1. They survived. While they are 6-4, I would think they would win the West right now. The question is now, Patriots are going to have a bye. The Ravens probably will now. If the Ravens lose a few games and the Chiefs can win out or whatever, they don't own a tiebreaker over the Ravens, so they might get a bye. But at this point, I'd say probably not. They're going to have to play in the wild card game, and we'll see what happens from there. So I'm probably right on the Chiefs making the playoffs, but I'm not. Another wild card I picked was the Browns. I was wrong there, and 2 weeks ago I went on air and talked at length about the Browns and they're disappointing. Well, yes, they're now 3-6 and they're having a Thursday night game against the Steelers. They're probably not going to make it to the playoffs. In fact, almost certainly not. They just dug themselves too deep of a hole. They are, I don't know, they dug themselves too deep of a hole. I don't know what it is. Baker Mayfield very vastly underachieves the offense. We thought they had one great game against the Ravens back in week 4. That has not been the same. The Browns have probably one of the most disappointing teams in the league, alongside the Jets. I'm sure people have had the Jets make it to the playoffs. Are now 2-7 after beating the Giants and lost the Dolphins. But the Browns are not going to make it to the playoffs. Teams that are wild cards instead, kind of a surprise. The Steelers, who I didn't think would make it to the playoffs, even with Ben Roethlisberger, and give them credit. When Roethlisberger got hurt, I wrote them off. Thought they're not going to make it to the playoffs. I think they even got to 0-3 at one point. They're now 5-4. The season ended today. They'd be a wild card team. And then on the other side of things, the Bills, who, again, their biggest strength is defense. That's what they rely on. And do they have enough defense to be one of those teams that gets in the playoffs and defense can carry them into a deep playoff run? Maybe that could be a possibility. And we still have 7 weeks to see how well Josh Allen plays, since I watched him a good bit early in the season. And I think what it was is he made some nice plays, could really move around, made some nice throws, has a strong arm. He just hasn't figured it out yet. But the Bills are winning. Well, yes, they did lose to the Browns. They will likely make it to the playoffs. I did not have them making it to the playoffs. I didn't think that was possible. So I was inaccurate there. Oh, and I forgot about this. Since it took place in the preseason. But my AFC Championship pick, which boy do I look bad right now. I predicted that the Chargers would go to the AFC Championship game. I predicted that the Browns would make it to the divisional round. And the conference championship game would be Patriots over Chargers. That was my pick. I forgot about that. I look bad now. And the Chargers have underperformed. So you can say they're one of the most disappointing teams in the league. So now I want to jump over to the NFC side of things. In the East, I'm going to say it's going to be the Eagles. Now, I'm kind of wrong there. They're both 5-4 along with the Cowboys, who I also picked to make it to the playoffs. But here's an interesting storyline about, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the Eagles and Cowboys, I both predicted winning the division. The Cowboys lost on Sunday Night Football last night. And at the Eagles, they are 5-4 right now. They're playing against the Patriots this upcoming week, which is probably a loss. And are they disappointing? Yeah. People can say they're disappointing for sure. And will they get into the playoffs? I don't know. It's going to be close whether they do or not. The NFC there's probably 8 teams that are capable of being in the playoffs in the NFC, maybe 9. And I just want to see how the season plays out with the Eagles. The Bears are predicted to win the North. I am wrong there, since the Packers are way better than I ever thought. In fact, I didn't trust the Packers to make it to the playoffs. Maybe since 2 years ago, if Aaron Rodgers being hurt, and last year of Mike McCarthy, I thought, well, maybe it's an adjustment year. for the Green Bay Packers, just trying to get into the playoffs. Maybe they need a year to learn. Maybe it's sort of a rebuilding year. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just don't make it to the playoffs. Maybe the Bears and the Vikings are just better than the Packers. That's not the case. The Packers are now 8-2. They're going to make it to the playoffs. They have a retooled defense, and if they can get a bye, and then you could talk about them as a Super Bowl contender, possibly to win the Super Bowl and certainly to make it. The Bears are disappointing due to the play of Mitchell Trubisky, and we'll also bring up the Bears later on towards the end of the show as well. But I was wrong on the Bears. They are almost certainly not going to win the North. It's going to be hard for them to make it to the playoffs, much less win the division. The South, I said the Saints. For a brief stretch in Week 2, that started to look questionable when Drew Brees was hurt, since I thought the door was open for the Falcons, which the Falcons' two wins this year, came against the Eagles in Week 2, which that makes the Eagles look bad for losing to the Falcons. For sure, that would certainly affect their strength of schedule when it came down to tiebreakers or whatever. I think they keep track of that stuff. I don't know if this was college football, that would look bad for sure. And then the other win was yesterday against the Saints, which I will go through that game later on in the week. But wow, that was one of the surprises of the week for sure. But again, the Saints are going to win the division. The Panthers yesterday lost to the Packers, and I watched that entire game. So that really, what that did is what that did to the Panthers is it decreased their playoff odds, or decreased their division odds by a significant amount. So it's almost certainly going to be the Saints. They just had a bad game yesterday. I kind of saw part of it. I had it on the background when I was watching the Ravens-Bengals game, but just very, very surprising loss. But they're going to win the division. Since again, they went. It's kind of funny. They went from 7-1 while the Falcons dropped to 1-7. So during that entire time span, the Saints ran away with the division. The Panthers losing yesterday. The Saints are far more talented than the Panthers, anyways, or the Buccaneers or whatever. So again, the Saints are going to win the division. The Rams. Here's the interesting thing about the West. The 49ers, as of today, they are 8-0. They're the last undefeated team in the NFL. How they're doing it, I've seen them play some games. Jimmy G has had some good games so far. He's been good. Really, their strength is running. They're one of the best running teams in the NFL. And their second biggest strength is, and it might be updated now, I'm going to have to look at the league, but they're for a long time, the Patriots had one of the best defenses we had ever seen. And now, with the Patriots' performance against the Ravens, where they allowed 37 points, maybe now the Rams have the first-ranked defense in terms of scoring. That is probably the case. I'd have to look it up. Or maybe it's still the Patriots. But either way, they have the best defense in the NFC. They're built on running, so they're moving the ball fairly well with passing and running and defense. I had no idea that was coming. The 49ers maybe thought, maybe they could be a playoff contender, since I thought, I think the Rams are certain. Here's what I thought. And narratives can change so quickly. Since 2 years ago, I thought, well, the Seahawks are not as good as their Super Bowl days, but the Rams, how good are they really? They just hired a new coach, John McVay. I think it's going to take a while for them to get going. And alright, so I thought, the Seahawks, they're just going to run away with the division this year. And then last year, with the Rams kind of going off the Super Bowl year, I thought, okay, they're going to be the class of the NFC again this year. They're going to run away with the West, since I thought the Seahawks, maybe they're pretty good. Maybe last year's a fluke. Maybe they can get in. I don't know. Which I had the Seahawks missing the playoffs, believe it or not. And the 49ers, I thought, were nowhere near ready. I mean, we need to see a full year out of Jimmy G first. And they're 8-0. I look bad there. And the Seahawks, by the way, are 7-2. One of their losses was to the Ravens in Week 7. So And who knows? Maybe that'll be a Super Bowl rematch. But that could be a sleeper Super Bowl pick actually. And then, so that's gonna be a good Monday Night Football game. I'm gonna be watching that tonight. That will be interesting to watch. I kind of want to see what happens in that game. Probably gonna be a lot of running. Both teams running is their strength. That's how the Seahawks made it to the playoffs last year. Russell Wilson, who is likely going to win, could very well win the MVP award. That'll be fun to watch. The question is, does the 49ers defense shut down the Seahawks offense? That'll be interesting to see. And then for my wild card picks, I had the Cowboys and Vikings, which for the Vikings winning last night against the Cowboys. So if it comes down to this, whether the Eagles, let's say the Eagles win the division, and then the Cowboys are a wild card team, the Vikings already have a tiebreaker over the Cowboys. So that can be an important factor, right? So you look at those. So you look at those two factors there. So again, the Vikings, they're likely going to make it to the playoffs. The question is, will the Cowboys make it to the playoffs? And for the Rams to make it to the playoffs, since whoever wins this game, if the Seahawks beat the 49ers, then they'll have some sort of tiebreaker. Now, it's a little bit hard to sort out right now, since there's kind of the bye weeks. Since the Seahawks have played 9 straight weeks without a bye, while the 49ers have already had their bye week. So if the Seahawks win, then they'll probably gain some control of the West. And certainly, and the question is what happens in round 2 when they play. So there's that factor to consider. And on the other hand, right now, you have so if the Rams want to make it to the playoffs, they're going to have to be the third team from the West. Every once in a while, there's years where a division will send 3 teams to the playoffs. And if the Rams want to make it to the playoffs, they will have to be the third team from the West, already losing to the 49ers and to the Seahawks and to a Buccaneers team that has 3 wins. They also lost to the Buccaneers. So that was a bad loss there. So that's what's going to happen there. So the Rams are going to make the argument of being one of the more disappointing teams in the league since they just lost to the Super Bowl last year. I picked them to win the Super Bowl last year, and they didn't win, obviously, but still looking at that, right? So in the playoffs, these are the teams that I had. One pick that looks bad is I have the Eagles as a 2 seed. It will be interesting if they even make it to the playoffs at all. So what I thought with the Eagles is Carson Wentz is healthy. Let's see if he can stay healthy for a full year. We know what they're capable of 2 years ago. And just that magic, especially in the regular season. How good that Eagles regular season team was with Wentz in 2017. We have hardly seen that at all this year or last year. We have not seen that consistently. Have not been consistently good or very good of what they were the year where they won the Super Bowl. And when they won the first Super Bowl, we were thinking they would contend for another one. And we'll see. It's early. I mean, maybe they can win the East, get in, and maybe they make another run and they get hot. But right now, the last basically year and a half, last 24, 25 games, I have yet to see what the Eagles were during that Super Bowl year. We have not seen that enough. They've lost more games already, and this was the case last year too, midseason, than they did all that Super Bowl year put together. They're 13-3 that year. This year, they're already 5-4. They're already 3-4 just 2 weeks ago. So they had to win 2 games in a row. Right, and then Bears are out, Cowboys, Vikings. So right now, if you had to say the wild card teams that I think are very likely in the playoffs, I'd say the Saints are almost certainly in. Niners and Seahawks are likely teams. The question is who wins the division. So you're going to have 2 of those teams in. North, it's going to be the Packers. They're probably going to win the North. They're going to be in, I would say. And the East is down to the Eagles or Cowboys. One of them might be a wild card. And then maybe the Vikings can be a wild card as well. If they are, that leaves the Rams out. So the Rams are, and I'd have to look up. Their offense is just not the same. I mean, they did not score very well, and I saw a little bit of them against the Steelers yesterday. Again, I'm going to go through that later in the week and take a closer look at what they were against the Steelers. But I guarantee you, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to look at the rankings, offensive rankings, and I guarantee you they're not what they were in 2017 and 18, where they're very near, if not at the top of the league in many offensive categories. This year, it is a very different year, and you can say right now that the Los Angeles Rams are one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL. Conference championship picks at Saints over Eagles. The Saints could very well be on their way to the conference championship game, while the Eagles probably not. Even if they do get into the playoffs, they somehow do win the division, they would play someone like probably they would end up being a 4 seed, most likely, and they'd play someone like the Seahawks or 49ers, and they'd more than likely, again, you have the home field advantage, but they would more than likely lose in the first round of the playoffs. I doubt they're going to the conference championship game. This is as of right now, and things can change. I am doing this basically episode at mid-season. I want to look back at mid-season, and if I revisit this, say 3 or 4 weeks from now, kind of a quarter way through, then maybe things look different. Things can change over the next few weeks. So I'm going to watch and see what changes. In my preseason pick, Patriots over Saints, that looks good so far. You know, that could have been all but over, say, back in week 2 when Drew Brees got hurt. So that's my pick now. And now I want to jump on. I want to talk about a topic that was a big story around the league this week is Cam Newton's days with the Panthers could be over. And the reason why his days with the Panthers could be over is Cam Newton, and this is a report, this came from Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, who is one of the highly valued insiders, along with Adam Schefter, this is from NFL Network, said yesterday Cam Newton will be put on IR. So what that means is I think the minimum time he can be on IR is 8 weeks. So what this means is regular season is basically over. So he's not going to play for the rest of the season. And this injury, it goes back to week 2. And reading some stories and articles, I read some stories from the Panthers, Athletic Beat, CBS Sports, as this injury goes all the way back to week 2. And what it's called, it starts with an L. The condition he has is you basically miss 6 to 8 weeks, and right now we're at that time frame where we thought maybe he was getting ready to come back. And what that means is, could he have surgery? Since again, going into this season, he had shoulder surgery. I think he's had multiple shoulder issues over the last couple of years. So what IR means is the regular season's over, and does he come back from the playoffs? The Panthers make it to the playoffs, and again, I talked at length about what the NFC picture looked like, and the Panthers are barely out of it. And at the end of the year, I didn't have them making it to the playoffs. So that's a big if they can get into the playoffs. And why would you start someone who basically the Panthers went 0-2 with Cam Newton this year? And granted, he was playing hurt this year. He did not have it, could not run the ball at all. And he just couldn't go any further. So, again, he's not going to play for the Panthers anymore this year. There's that question. And then another question that raised up. This is from Jason Lockenford of CBS Sports. I read his article today in preparation for this. So what he said is, the headline of the article was, and I read it, is the Panthers ownership was unsure of giving him an extension even before the foot injury occurred. And next year is the last year of his contract. And what I looked up is he's worth $21 million next year on the salary cap. So what this means is, and I kind of thought about this thought process. The Panthers started winning games when Cam Newton left the team, and it's not like he was ineffective just since he was ineffective. He was clearly injured. But the point is, a healthy Kyle Allen is more effective than a hurt Cam Newton. That's just the way it is. And I think the injuries started last year. Since this time a year ago, I remember watching that game very well. They played against the Steelers. It was a Thursday night game. And the Steelers offense went all over them, which that Steelers team a year ago looks very different than they do right now, a year later. And they're 6-2, and they end up being 7-9. Cam was playing hurt, and now he tried to play hurt again this year. Last year's the shoulder. This year, it's more the foot. So that's just the point. And Kyle Allen takes over, and now they are a playoff contender. Are they going to make it to the playoffs? I'm going to say probably not. The NFC, and that's been the case over the last few years, is there's been a very talented league. You know, they have more talent than the AFC, since the AFC is basically, for the most part of the decade, has been dominated by the Patriots. And I think there's the Steelers, the Ravens, the Broncos. They're kind of their biggest challengers. But overall, consistently, it's been the Patriots. Where in the NFC, it's kind of been different over the last few years. I think the Eagles have had their share of dominance one time. The Falcons did at one point in time. It's kind of changed. The Panthers did. Now it's been the Saints. Kind of back and forth this decade. The Packers, kind of back at times you thought were the best team in the NFC. You could make that argument now, and certainly for much of the decade, besides the last couple seasons. There's a lot of teams, maybe you could talk about the Cowboys, or the NFC, the shift of powers kind of jump back and forth over the years, which results in kind of a strong league where right now, there are 8 or 9 teams that are capable of playing in a playoff game and maybe even winning a playoff game, but you can only send 6. And I think that's going to get sorted out as kind of tiebreakers go. But the point is, you look at them being 0-2, and you're thinking, it was clear Cam Newton was hurt, but I was thinking, oh no. I wonder if Ron Rivera could be fired. That was my thought when they're 0-2 and Cam Newton came out of the lineup. So I thought, well, here comes Kyle Allen. And I remember talking about a discussion of, since right around that same time, Drew Brees got hurt. And I was thinking, who's gonna win the division? At times, people could point out right away, especially after the Falcons beat the Eagles. Maybe the Falcons are favorites to win the AFC South right now. That disappeared in a matter of weeks. And then 2 months later, that thought is completely gone. And then later on, you could have said, I thought, what if the Bucks can get hot? And then the Panthers, I wrote them off, and now here they are. They are a far superior team than the Falcons, and they're clearly, if you want to look at the division of the NFC South, it is very clear who the best teams are. 1, Saints. 2, Panthers. 3, Bucks. 4, Falcons. It's very clear what the ranking is from top to bottom based on the team and where they stand in the division. Well, they give them credit there. This is the reason why, and yes, we're talking about the cap hit. So what I'm about to say is, and this is clear around the league, Cam Newton probably will not be back next year. Cam Newton's days as the Panthers are probably over. Since this is a good Panthers team, and if let's say they get rid of Cam Newton, they have $21 extra million, say, in cap space. I would think it would want to be a trade, since if you release him, I think they'd still have to pay something. If they did a trade, I know in the Major League Baseball, for an example, the D-backs are still paying some of Greinke's money, or the Marlins are still paying some of Giancarlo Stanton's money. I think in the NFL, I think it's different. I don't think they split pay, or otherwise I would have heard about that by now. They don't do that in the NFL. So again, Cam Newton's probably going to be traded, and maybe the Panthers get an extra draft pick. Possibly, maybe even something like, maybe even, what if they got an extra first-round pick to use? So they have flexibility. So even if they do end up missing the playoffs, which they probably will, but what if they have an 18th pick, and then some other pick they get maybe is a little bit higher? So maybe they have 2 first-round picks to use, and they have extra money to spend in free agency to retool the team. So So the Panthers getting rid of Cam Newton could work, and then maybe Kyle Allen's ready to go next year. Has a whole offseason to prepare to get better. Maybe Kyle Allen's your future quarterback. I mean, that is very well possible. Of course, again, they still have 7 games to go, but that is a possibility. So it'll be interesting to see what this Panthers team is. Since great job, this Panthers team, Cam Newton got hurt. That could have been the end of that, but they stayed in contention. They are still in contention. And their season's far from over right now. And also, another thing with Cam Newton is his foot injury. No one could figure it out. I think he visited 3 doctors by early November, so he had 3 separate opinions. So, I don't know exactly what they were, but one doctor said, "Oh, I think you need to get surgery. You're going to be out 3 months." Another one said, "Oh, you know what? You don't need surgery. Maybe you can play." I don't know. You got 3 separate opinions. I have no idea what the opinions are, and I don't want to. I could spend the next 5 minutes trying to make up what they are. But I'm not going to do that since I don't know what the opinions are. But regardless, his foot is hurt, will not play the rest of this year. And now the question is he getting surgery? Since A, does he miss the rest of the year and then he's ready to go without surgery? Or B, does his foot need to be repaired to make sure it's good? So either way, regardless, I've never gone through this. But Cam Newton has been hurt throughout his career. Now, granted, has not missed that many games, but he's taken a lot of shots. He's had his fair share of surgeries. He's going to have to go through a rehab process, which I'm sure it's going to be very painful for him if he wants to get back to the field. I mean, professional athletes and certainly football players, think of all the surgeries they get and the rehab they have to do to come back from injuries. It's something that I can't even imagine doing. And there's no way I could do it. I mean, they're just professional athletes. We don't realize just how well conditioned and how in world-class shape they are. I mean, I try to stay in good shape, right? But just the shape they're in, I can't even imagine. So Cam Newton, which I made a list, I think I found 6 teams, and there could be 7 or 8 that maybe I left off and saying, maybe not. And this is just completely based on my opinion. I am just guessing where Cam Newton could go next year. And for your YouTube listeners who are listening to this video, feel free to say your comment on where you think Cam could go and whether you disagree or disagree. And when I publish this video, I will put a list of teams that I think. I'll write this down. I'll put it all over. Maybe I'll put it on Facebook, Twitter, things like that. And, anyone can feel free to chime in of whether you agree or disagree. This is just a list that I made up, that I completely made up, and this is just something that I want to share. So here's what I said. I said 6 teams. I said the Bills. I talked about them early in the show. They could very well make it to the playoffs. Yet Josh Allen, which I think they'll give him more time, if he is just not capable of leading an NFL offense. Since remember, they made it to the playoffs 2 years ago with Tyrod Taylor as their quarterback, and they moved on from him. And granted, they made it to the playoffs since it was a weak AFC. And it was kind of, some people say they didn't even mean to make it to the playoffs. This year, we have plenty of notice of whether they could get into the playoffs, and maybe we're more expecting them to make it to the playoffs than, say, not expecting them to make it to the playoffs. Right? So, do they move on from Josh Allen? Probably not, since if they did make it to the playoffs. But I'm just saying this could be a possibility that maybe if I think what would have to happen, A, the Bills have to miss the playoffs, and B, Josh Allen would have to really underperform the rest of the way, since he has about 7 more games to correct, say, his first half struggles. So maybe he does perform well down the stretch. I don't know. Things can change. But I think it's unlikely that he goes to the Bills. That's just a team I threw out. Titans, and I think this is probably the most likely scenario. Marcus Mariota, they've given him time after time. They've given him 5 full years. Has been they've been borderline playoff teams the last 3 years. And Marcus Mariota it seems like every year always misses 2 games a year. Always gets some sort of injury and misses a game or 2, and they have to rely on some sort of backup quarterback. This year it's Ryan Tannehill. They have stayed afloat. But of course, Mariota's been benched now. So what this means is they're going to move on, and maybe they decide in Cam Newton. The Titans decide is that's the quarterback we need, since they have not been able to win the South, which maybe they could have done last year if Mariota was effective. Since throughout their time they have had solid running, and last year they had one of the best defenses in the NFL. And this year their defense is still quite good, but this underperformance of the offense has held them back, and has probably cost them some times in the playoffs. Yes, they won a playoff game by beating the Chiefs a couple of years ago, and they went on to play New England, and the Patriots were clearly the better team. There's no question about that. But is Cam Newton the quarterback that the Titans need to win the South and maybe make a potential playoff run? Maybe go to the AFC Championship game. Maybe that is their missing piece. Since Cam Newton has playoff experience, knows what it's like to play in the playoffs, knows what it's like to play in the Super Bowl. So just maybe needs a change of scenery, has a new foot, is all ready to go. That could be the place for him to go, and I think that's the most likely place. Broncos, if Drew Lock is not ready to play and if Joe Flacco leaves, I think that's unlikely, and I think Cam definitely has some leverage and where he could play. Since I think he wants to play for a contender. He's not going to want to play for the Dolphins, no way, or somebody, or just a struggling franchise. So the Broncos, I think there's a small chance, but I don't think so. I don't think he's going to go to the Broncos. Saints, and this is unlikely, but I came up with a scenario how Cam Newton could play for the Saints. Drew Brees decides to retire, which if the Saints win the Super Bowl, he says, you know what, this is the way to play. I want my last memory of me playing is of me winning a Super Bowl. I am 41 years old. I think it's time for me to retire, right? I think that's how Drew Brees would retire if he won a Super Bowl. Which I don't think he retires. I think he comes back. If they don't win the Super Bowl, I think he comes back. I think he wants to get one more Super Bowl, maybe two, out of him, right? And I think he very likely comes back. He hasn't talked about retiring. And if let's say he does retire, and let's say Bridgewater, since last year, this could happen. He had an offer to go to the Dolphins, which I think he looks good by not taking it. Right? So if Bridgewater decides to play elsewhere, like takes an offer to go to probably one of these teams that I have mentioned on the list potentially. And again, that could be one of their missing. He could be their missing piece. Since Bridgewater performed fairly well, they won every game that he started, and when he played a full game. Since in the Rams game, he was basically just their only two losses were the Rams and Falcons. Bridgewater was just kind of thrown in, kind of unexpectedly, and maybe wasn't ready that game. But after having a whole week, a game to play every day, we know Bridgewater is capable of being a starter in this league. So that could be that's a small possibility. I don't think he's going to go to the Saints. Here's another one, and I think this is a very popular pick, especially before this week. So Mitchell Trubisky did throw 3 touchdown passes yesterday, but at the end of the day, he's really struggled this year. He's been one of the reasons why he's kind of been holding the Bears back, not forward. Again, sort of like the Titans scenario where you have this really good defense, and if you had a quarterback, you could win the division and be one of the better teams in your respective league. And if this week was a one-time thing and he continues to struggle, then I think the Bears could be that team. I think that could be a good fit since you have the Bears defense and you have Cam Newton coming in. I think that's a move that they should definitely try to invest in. It'll be interesting to see if it works. And then here's the sixth, and that's the final team I listed, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, again, Jameis Winston, like Mariota's on his 5th-year option, has been given basically every possible opportunity. And Winston last year at times was benched in favor of Ryan Fitzpatrick. So yes, he's been given every opportunity. And now the question is, does he get another year out of Bruce Arians, since maybe he needs more than 1 year? Since I think he's played for 3 coaches in his career, right? And I think Dirk Cutter was there for 3 years. Or maybe 4, something like that. Either way, maybe he needs more than 1 year from Bruce Arians. Maybe Arians needs a 1 year look at him and see what he did wrong. And maybe he can try to correct that. Maybe he does come back for a 6 year. I don't know. Do you maybe franchise tag him? I don't know. So does he move on from the Bucks? So if Winston leaves, is that where Cam Newton goes? Right? Since Winston always will and always has put up better passing numbers in terms of like, we'll probably throw more touchdowns, we'll always throw more passing yards, but again, Winston's been one of the most turnover prone players in the league and was in and out, was benched at Fitzpatrick twice, I think, was in and out of the lineup last year. So that'll be interesting to see if he moves on to the Bucks. So regardless, Newton's not going to be a Panther next year. I think it is very, very unlikely. And I think it's just time for him to move on. It's time for him to go elsewhere. And I think he has a lot of choices. Might have more than the 6 choices I listed. And more realistically, I think the Bills and Saints are unlikely. I think more likely it's going to come down to the Titans and Bears. I think those are the 2 most likely candidates. Teams with good defenses that have shown they can make it to the playoffs. And the Bears should have won a playoff game last year. There are teams that are capable of making it to the playoffs, but yet the state of their offense is not there. Right? So I'm interested to see where Cam plays in 2020. And where he goes, I don't know. And come March, this could be an interesting discussion to talk about. So I'm not going to predict. I'm not going to make a prediction where Cam Newton's going to play, since these teams' seasons are not over, right? Their seasons are not over, even if Cam Newton's season most likely is, and things can change very quickly. And it doesn't make sense. This, I think for the Saints, Drew Brees retires. B, Bridgewater moves on elsewhere, and C, Cam Newton have to sign with them. So I think it would take 3 things, right? It would be basically A, B, C. Right? I think the Bills, that would be another A, B, C situation, right? Going over it again. And then for the Bucks, I think would be maybe just one scenario or another. So it will be interesting to see where he goes. So in terms of another episode, I don't know for sure yet. I might make another one this week. I don't know if I'll do any baseball off-season stories. I guess this week in baseball, what it is right now is it's going to be the award finalists of tonight's Rookie of the Year, then Manager of the Year, then the MVP Cy Young. So I might bring that up briefly maybe in an episode. I don't know. So that's what I have in store for now. But it's fun talking football again, because I've been doing all baseball basically for the last 6 weeks. Last week I was trying to adjust from what was going on in Washington, D.C. with the Nationals winning the World Series. So now I'm back to football, and I have a lot to go through this week. I've only seen a small part of what's going on in the league right now, so I still have some catching up to do, but I look forward to the next time I come on air. Thank you.